Welcome to the Default Profitable Podcast. You're listening to the next episode. And today we're going to focus on running a tech business. Talk about some successes, some failures, and some lessons. I'm your host, Matt Nettleton. And today my guest is Chris Konow, CEO of Clean Slate.
Hi there.
Chris, welcome to the show. Good to be here.
Thank you. Yeah, this is fun.
Yeah, we were talking, and I've known you since probably the mid-90s, and this is the first time we've spoken in 25 years. So
you helped us find our first home in Indianapolis.
A long time ago.
So a lot of good memories in that house.
Well, why don't we do this? Obviously, we know each other, but why don't you take a minute or two, introduce yourself and your business to the people that are listening?
Clean Slate Technology Group, a technology company that's been around this year for it's going on 25 years. Been around starting first in the IBM world ecosystem, and then we gravitated to more modern partnerships with companies like AWS and Microsoft Azure to build out cloud and data practice offerings. So we kind of been through a lot over the last 25 years, starting out as a traditional value-added reseller and then moving to a model where we're truly a cloud and modern data consultancy. We're headquartered in Carmel, Indiana. We have roughly 70 employees. Most of those employees are right here in the state of Indiana. I've been with the company now for about 13 years, and it's just been fun building like this next phase of the business. As you know, we've gone through 3 CEOs in its 25 years, and so I'm the third one that's come into play and just moving towards, a new future for the company over the last few years.
What did you do before you joined the company? So go back 13 years.
I actually have a very unique background. When people ask me, how did you get started in technology? I actually went to a liberal arts school, Denison University, with a art history degree, which is very applicable to running a tech company. Wanted to be an art curator, but realized very quickly that it was very hard to get started in that field in Indianapolis, Indiana. And so I gravitated toward technology through an opportunity to go work at the time Macmillan Computer Publishing. It was a great place for young adults to cut their teeth and learn a lot about technology. After a few years there, I gravitated towards consulting. I liked working with people. I liked solving problems. A consulting company in the space that we're in is all about the people that you work with and the clients that you service. And so it's just, before I got to Clean Slate, I worked for much larger public companies and a few other private companies, just cutting my teeth and getting a strong understanding of what consulting is all about.
So you joined Clean Slate. What was your first position?
My first position, so when I came to Clean Slate 13 years ago, we were a traditional value-added reseller. So all we did was resell software. And at the time, it was just IBM. The CEO at the time wanted to diversify the business and saw the value in building out a consulting company where you could achieve greater margins, bigger opportunity for growth, and you were providing more high value to the customers. And so I came in as employee number 1 on the consulting side. I was at the time thinking of starting my own business and building out my own consulting company. Clean Slate just kind of gave me the opportunity to do it within a business that was, 10, 12 years old at the time. So it was a nice opportunity to go in, have some stability, but also have some opportunities to build out an entrepreneurial, type business within a traditional business that's been around for 12 or 13 years.
What's the progression that you went from first consulting hire to CEO? How many steps were in the middle?
I have a lot of people that work here today with me that I've worked with over the last probably 15 to 20 years. But let's just say it took some convincing to get some of those people to come over here and work with me. When you go and start a new business and you're employee number 1, you really have to have kind of a vision and strategy for the type of company that you want to build going forward. And so early on, it was really convincing some of those key personnel to buy into the vision, buy in what we're trying to do here, and get some of those first key employees on board. And then it was also doing the same thing. Where can we find that first client, that second client, that third client, and get them to buy into what we're doing here and the value that we can bring to them? So that's kind of where it all started.
You come in as the first consulting hire to a value added reseller.
Yeah.
At some point, they said, "Hey, we need you to take on more and different responsibility."
Yes.
And what was that like?
What it really came down to is, who are we going to be? What are we going to do? Throw out a cliche here or a pun here, but like Clean Slate, it was kind of, they came in and gave me a clean slate to say, hey, what do you want to build? We had to figure out what was the market like at the time. What were the needs that existed within the clientele that we were targeting? What clientele or what unique or ideal client profile were we going after? So we had to do some foundational things to really build a consultancy that had strong offerings that customers would be interested in. We needed to make sure we were aligning with the right technology and software companies to support companies, clients that had an interest in implementing those platforms, that software. And so it was very much focused on building the right strategy and foundation very early on to make sure that we got it right and we didn't have to go through a vicious cycle of recreating ourselves every year.
Obviously, you had a pretty good understanding of the technology side of it.
Yeah.
What did you have to learn from the leadership and running a business side of it? What are some of the things that you didn't know that you thought you knew that it turns out you didn't know?
Yeah. I mean, the biggest thing that I would say is, in previous companies that I work for, I was your typical sales person, very focused on driving client new relationships, closing deals. Like, I was just very much focused on the sales side of things. And when you come into a new organization and they ask you to pretty much build a new business unit, selling is obviously important. You got to acquire clients. But we also had to find a way to do it where we could actually figure out a way to be profitable and make money. And I'd say that was the biggest challenge that I had early on. I mean, I knew how to operate and walk through a P&L statement and understand, all the costs associated with the business. But I had to very quickly not only focus on selling, but I had to focus on building foundational financial tools, operational tools. Like, we had to figure out a way that we could do things to get to a profitable state. And I think that's the biggest learning curve that I had coming in. I didn't just have responsibility for going out and finding new customers and selling. I had to figure out how we were going to deliver on the solutions, how we were going to do it in a financially solid way, how we were going to actually get to a point where we could actually drive value to our Clean Slate business, meaning I made money for the company. And that was the biggest learning curve and challenge for me.
When you came in, were you still a value-added reseller switching to cloud-based service provider?
Interestingly, we were still a value-added reseller. And interestingly, we still are today.
Okay.
Our business with IBM is still strong. It's still growing. It's just we now have two pieces of the puzzle. And it's almost like two companies that can actually work together to cross-sell and upsell opportunities. And so it was kind of unique at the time where we did have somewhat of a customer base that we could start with to target to say, hey, we're working with you around IBM, but I'm sure you're looking at cloud. Do you have needs around AWS? Do you have needs around Microsoft Azure? There were good opportunities for cross-sell and upsell across the two distinct practices within our company.
If you think back to when you stepped into the big chair and you stopped just being a sales guy, What are some of the other things that you had to kind of account for that you really weren't worried about when you were just carrying a quota?
As, the CEO, you were making sure that you're taking care of your employees. So there's a people component. There's also like a talent and recruiting component. There's an operations component. There's so many variables. And early on, when you're building a business, you have to play a lot of hats. It's not as easy as, well, if I need assistance here, I'll just go hire someone, because early on, you don't have the budget to do that. As we've grown as an organization, now I have more flexibility to be able to bring those people in. But early on, you don't. Each day you walk into the day and you start to create that list of priorities. And those priorities are all over the place. Someday it's a very much focused on how I manage my talent and my people. Other times it's around client success. Other times it's an HR thing that you have to deal with. So it's very much learning to juggle priorities around a broad spectrum of things that come up day to day in a new business.
We both know people that have worked in tech as sales reps, and they've been sales reps their entire life, and they've not ever wanted to move into a leadership type position. What was it that made you say, you know what, I think I want to hold the steering wheel and pick the direction?
I've always played the role as a salesperson where it's a team effort. There's a lot of salespeople that are very good at what they do, but they're very narrowly focused on their goal, their accomplishment, what they need to do to make as much money as possible. I was always much more of where I had a broader appeal to how we could win as a team. So when you start to look at that, the skills that I possessed as an individual, I just felt like I had more to offer outside of sales. I felt like there were leadership qualities that I possessed that I could bring to operations and all these other aspects of our business. And to be honest with you, it was just more rewarding. The whole concept of when the team wins, it's just one of those things where I felt more rewarding in my career when I took on more responsibility and had more broader appeal to having more of an impact on the organization than just having focused impact in one particular area.
If somebody else comes to you and says, hey, I'm thinking about taking on greater responsibility, they say to you, hey, listen, I'm thinking I'm going to start my own business, or I'm going to take over the CEO spot. What questions do you ask them? How do you react to that?
It all comes down to what's the driving force behind what you're doing. When you step into a CE role, there's a lot of things that you can't be selfish anymore with your own ambitions. You're there to help satisfy the ambitions of everyone on your team. And so you can't want to get to the CXO level just to have the title. There has to be other compelling reasons of why you want to do that. Otherwise, you're going to burn out pretty quickly, in my opinion.
When you're responsible for everybody else, it's actually you're responsible for everybody else.
Yeah. And if you care about those people as much as like I do, like I said, I've worked with some people on my team for 10, 15, 20 years. And so you get to know their families, their kids. Like there's just more to what we're trying to accomplish here. And it's not just also about the work, but it's just what environment are we creating for them to thrive, not only personally, but professionally as well.
If you could go back in 2025, Chris could go back to the night before you take over as CEO, you got a to-do list of 57 million things that you could do on day one. What's the one thing that you should do on day one? What's the most important thing that you should start with?
The one thing that I would say is when we first got started, we spun our wheels a lot. And it was always because we were very risk adverse in the sense that we wanted to figure everything out right from the beginning. Like, I want to know what is the ideal client, what's the best offering, you want to know everything so that you're just going to get it right. And there's no risk in what you're doing. But I think what I've learned over the years, and I tell my team this all the time, you got to get to a comfort level in your decisions where you feel like, 60 to 70% of where you're headed, you feel right about. And then you just got to go in that direction, because you're never going to know the answers to the direction that you're headed in terms of getting it right the first time. You got to be agile. You got to be willing to adjust. And you got to be willing to take on the risk to fail. I feel like there was a lot of time that we spent trying to figure things out. And we should have just been acting upon our instincts versus, sitting in a conference room trying to whiteboard everything out, right? And that today is, even in a company now where we've got all these employees and a lot of things that are foundationally solid, I still encourage our team to be as entrepreneurial as possible and to really take that feedback that when you have an idea, you have a thought, you have a direction, if you have confidence in it, then go with it and we'll figure it out as we go.
Yeah, I think that's just go attack first. You can't, I've worked with business owners all the time, and the thing that watch fail time after time is trying to get it correct.
Yeah.
You can't, because you don't know enough, and you can't know enough. So at some point you just have to go do.
Right. And I would say that I've realized over these last 13 years that the time that we spent more upfront planning versus just doing, the doing results actually ended up better than spending more time planning, if that makes sense.
You can over aim.
Yeah.
At some point, fire and correct is a lot more important.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and we're also in a market that changes all the time. I mean, you just look at technology today. A couple of years ago, nobody was talking about generative AI, and now that's all people want to talk about, right? And so sometimes you just can't anticipate where things are going and where the future's going. You just have to figure out, what value are you bringing to your clients and how do you maximize that value, and try to anticipate as much that may be coming in the future.
Yeah, it's the AI thing is overwhelming everything right now.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah.
All right. Well, where can people get more information about you and your company?
Once again, we're here in Indianapolis. We have our offices and our headquarters is in Carmel, Indiana on West Carmel Drive. Our website is cleanslatetg.com. Check us out on LinkedIn. We actually have an abundance of jobs that are out there today. So if there's people interested in wanting to get into cloud computing and data, we've got a lot of opportunities that are readily available. I love to grow our team here in the state of Indiana. Not that we don't hire outside of that, but we've done a pretty good job. I think people are sometimes amazed. We're like, wait a second, you have this many employees and they're all, 98% of them are in the state of Indiana. I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of talent here.
Yeah, that's true. All right. Well, we'll include information for people to contact you in the show notes.
Okay.
Anybody can head over to defaultprofitable.com to pick up on that. And if you're listening, there's 3 ways you can help us grow. You can leave a review, you can hit subscribe, and you can share this episode with somebody that you think might find it interesting. Chris, good to see you after only 25 years.
Yeah.
And thanks for being a guest.
Hey, thank you, Matt. I appreciate it.
No problem. And we'll be back next week with another episode of Default Profitable. Until then, stay focused, keep working, stay profitable.